ITV2 is live at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the Brickyard. After a 9-year absence, Formula One is back in the United States. And we have just 3 races to go, just a couple of points separating Häkkinen and today's pole sitter, Michael Schumacher. This Grand Prix could well be absolutely crucial. These are live pictures of the circuit that you're seeing here. A massive crowd, over 200,000. Redesigned circuit has been a sellout for months. You know, you can't get a hotel room anywhere in a 50-mile radius. Indy has gone F1 balmy. And hello there, we are 6 hours behind you here, just after midday. It's officially the start of autumn in Indiana, and how 25 degrees it was yesterday, a total change in the weather overnight. Temperature struggling to reach 14 or 15 degrees, and we have had plenty of rain here as well. Now then, Tony, can you believe it? Formula One at Indianapolis?
I didn't think it would happen. 91 years of this place. It counted for Formula One championship points between 1950 and 60, but getting your own race here is a chance to stamp a bit of Formula One on North America, a chance to really make it a genuine world championship. And so far it seems in general they've really taken to it, and it was just great watching the old majorettes there and the bands going along. It's real Americana with a mixture of these strange European folk who've invaded.
And we've been talking about the rain, Tony. There's a lot of it around. They normally, if it rains here, they go, no race, fellas.
That's right, that's right. And what it means is in past Indy 500s, after stopped after 20 laps or whatever, they might race the next day when it's dry, and the crowd all have to go home, and if they can't make it on the Monday, then that's tough. But they do not race in rain, so if it's a wet race, and there's a distinct possibility of that, it's history in the making here.
Well, it looks as though it is going to be a wet race, as you can see there, and a wet and a windy one as well. They have spent, you know, over £30 million redesigning Indianapolis in less than a couple of years. Indy, they call it the racing capital of the world because of its rich history. Murray Walker has been looking back.
The Indianapolis Motor Speedway was founded in 1909 as a testing ground for the area's growing car industry. The track was originally made out of crushed stone, but accidents in the first race convinced the owners to pave the speedway with 3.2 million bricks, giving it its nickname, the Brickyard. Ray Harroun won the first Indy 500 in 1911 at a speed of just over 74 miles an hour. Since then, the Indy 500 became one of the most prestigious races in the world, with stars of Formula One eager to test their nerve between the walls of the banked oval. Jim Clark and Graham Hill won successive 500 races in 1965 and 66, shocking the Americans by beating them at their own game and in their own Brickyard. And since then, names like Stewart, Piquet, Fittipaldi and Mansell have raced with greater or lesser success. Jacques Villeneuve won here in 1995 and is the only Formula One driver to have raced on the old track. But now, the rest of Formula One has arrived and some new history is about to be made.
Absolutely a bit of history being made. They're doing their best to clean up the revamped circuit, and as Tony has told you, incredibly, they don't race here when it's wet, and so one or two of the crowd here are going to be very surprised to see cars running at all when it is wet. Big Ferrari support here as well, as you can imagine, with Michael Schumacher on pole too. As I say, this place has been taken over by the world of Formula One. The Indianapolis Colts are at home tomorrow night. They're playing Jacksonville, and Jacksonville had to stay out of the city. No hotel rooms anywhere to be had. And the US Grand Prix due off in just over 50 minutes' time. Delighted that we're joined in the studio here by Adrian Reynard, sort of an engineering racing legend, I think probably what describes you, doesn't it? 30 years or so in the game. You've won in every formula, very much involved, as we can see now, with British American racing. Just give us your thoughts first of all about F1 coming here to Indy.
I think it's a great event. Just look at the number of people that have poured in today on a rainy day. Just endorses the fact that it is a very popular sport throughout the world, and it's had some great interest in the USA. I think it's absolutely amazing.
And one or two of the locals have said here, why should we change everything for Formula One? Why should we stand Indy on its head for Formula One? Do you feel that's fair?
I don't think we're standing Indy on its head. I think the Indy 500 and the Brickyard 400 are entities on their own, and this is just another type of racing. It's a different type of sport, different regulations, and perhaps some common but some unique fans as well. So I think it deserves a place here, and it's probably now the biggest spectators in Formula One. It's suddenly just become this massive event.
Your cars won the Indy 500 here twice in the mid-90s when a certain Mr. Jacques Villeneuve was driving for you, wasn't he? What are your memories? We can just see that down here. Your memories of that particular day.
Yes, well, it was an amazing thing because, as you probably recall, Jacques was actually 2 laps down, and I was watching the leaderboard from the grandstands, and we just didn't think he'd have a chance. But then he actually fought his way back. I remember on the grid, I'd said to him, "Look, I guarantee this car will last 500 miles." And he said to me after the race, his biggest worry was that he was going to have to do 505 miles, and he thought the warranty had run out.
How about this time around for BAR? I think that you were lumbered with a rather unfortunate quote that you might have said with your tongue in your cheek when you arrived in F1. You said, "We'll win our first race," and everyone has used that quote to hang you, haven't they, really?
Yeah, I don't mind being hung. It's something which I think is quite an important thing to do, is to have that will to win, and I don't change my aspirations now. I never have done. Maybe I thought that I need to believe we could win. That was really what it was. I think it would be foolish to say that you could come up against Ferrari's and McLaren's establishment and just go out and win. But I think if you're not here wanting to win, then you don't belong here. We're not a being there type of organisation. Nobody in our company at BAR nor Reynard wants just to be there. We all want to win, and we have our eyes set firmly on the top, and we want to be there at the moment. This year, we're being realistic. We would like to try and be there behind Ferrari and McLaren, and we've qualified there now. And so anywhere short of that, we're disappointed.
You see, one of the accusations about Jacques Villeneuve staying with you, and it's been asked, well, why should he stay with a team that's down the back and has got no chance of winning and being at the front where he deserves to be?
Well, he's a believer, and with Reynard, we always supported ourselves with people that believed in us. And at BAR, we started a team from nothing. 2 years ago, we had 3 or 4 people. Now we've got over 300, and I'd like to say hello to you guys back at the factory, and thanks for all your effort for getting us here. We've got a reliable car, and it's not something you do overnight. You can't build a company from nothing to a fully cultured world beater in a year or so. There's just too much going for it. McLaren and Ferrari are doing too much, too well, too competitively. Their engine suppliers are too good, too powerful, and it's a big challenge. But that's why we're in it. That's why Honda's in it with us, because we like the challenge. We like to beat them. We learn from our mistakes, and we've made plenty last year, I'm afraid, but we're going for it.
I was going to say that, I mean, hindsight it is a wonderful thing. You mentioned the mistakes that you made. Everybody does make mistakes when they go into a venture like this, but which ones in particular, looking back, would you say, well, perhaps we shouldn't have done that?
I wouldn't admit to any on the air, but we didn't have a very reliable car. Just looking on the technical side, I'm not speaking commercially or business-wise, our car wasn't as reliable as it ought to have been last year. We had a pretty poor reliability record. Whether it would have made much difference or not, I don't know, because the points system in Formula One, so few people, only the top 6 score points, and we didn't really get that close. This year, if you take out just the chassis, we've had a 92% reliability factor, and if you look at the whole scenario, including driver spins and the odd engine problem, we're about 70%, which isn't bad. McLaren won the championship last year with about 70% reliability factor. Obviously, we're now working with Japanese, and Honda don't like to make any mistakes, so our philosophy is 100% right, and we've got to make it right. But we think we've got everything there to be a real challenge next year.
Okay then, thanks for the moment. Let's just take a spin, shall we, round this Indianapolis Speedway. Even in the rain, they're going to be hitting speeds of over 200 miles an hour and at full throttle for over 20 seconds of each lap. Here is Martin Brundle to chat you round, and at the wheel, it's Jacques Villeneuve in the BAR in the dry.
On board with Villeneuve, pulling 3.5 lateral G through the banking. Even the camera's a little bit upset as it wobbles around 200 miles an hour over the start-finish line, building to 210. Don't run too close to the wall. There's a cushion of air there that'll slow you down. Now brake very, very late, down to second gear. 70 miles an hour, short squirt on the throttle. Just 60 miles an hour through turn 2 and into turn 3 immediately. A sweeping right-hander up to 130. and straight into the entry of 4. Now ignore the exit of the corner, get hard on the throttle, building through 105 miles an hour, and again straight into 6, 75 miles an hour. Villeneuve struggling to get the front end of the car to the apex of the corner, trying to get some camber thrust, and once again a short squirt, 70 miles an hour onto the back straight. 500 metres now, building up to 185 miles an hour. Be on the right hand side at the end, ready for turn 8, down to 75 miles an hour. Now you're into the Mickey Mouse part. Turn 9, just 50 miles an hour. Doesn't it look and feel and sound pedestrian? Turn 10, 60 miles an hour. Now the most important corner on the circuit, it doesn't look much. Turn 11, 80 miles an hour. But after this, you will not lift the throttle again for about a mile. Sweeping through 12 now, 155 miles an hour. Keep it low initially. Now you can start to climb up the banking. Watch Villeneuve use all of those 9 degrees to try and catapult out. He'll move towards the wall initially and then away once again into that long pit straight. It looks easy enough in the dry. I wonder how it will be if it rains for the race.
Well, I'm not sure if it's going to rain or not, Adrian, but it is going to be very, very wet, isn't it? How do you cope with that? What do the teams feel about that?
Well, we've got probably 20 people working on race strategy now between BAR and Honda. It's a lot of it's expert systems now. We write software for it. We try and look at every eventuality, weight, tyre degradation, track temperature, who's in front, who's behind. All those things we feed into the equation. Fuel consumption. So it's not a simple thing. It's not a case of one man making a decision anymore and making a call, oh, let's come in for some fuel. So there's a lot of expert help we get in making our decisions. And then, of course, it goes and rains at the last minute. So you've got to have the flexibility of being able to readapt the situation. We have a very strange situation today in that in a warm-up this morning, we got to a level where the wet tyres weren't actually going any quicker as it was getting drier. And the dry tyres weren't actually quick enough to go quicker than that. So when you get down to about 124 lap time, the dilemma is, do you leave the car out there doing 124s because it's not going to go any quicker if it's getting dry, or do you come in and put dries on, but knowing that the optimum lap is probably at 117? So there's a bit of no man's land there, which I don't think any software could sort out.
Yeah, is there a bit of you that quite likes it when you see the rain, because it does sort of even the playing field up a bit?
With our situation, this time of year, the reliability is usually better for McLaren, Honda, the guys in front of us. So in a normal race, if they last, we're going to have a hell of a job getting in front of them. So in some ways, something like a random situation or an accident not involving us would help. And it's, as I said, it's very difficult to try and get into those very few 6 points which are there. And 7th is just useless, really.
With your name, British American Racing, do you see yourselves a bit as the home team here today?
Well, I used to live here in 1995. We spent a year here. It's very dear to me, Indianapolis, and love the town, love the atmosphere, and love the fans. So it's nice for me. I think it's nice for Jacques as well. But not much of the British American team is too American here. We've got a few Americans employed.
Just a final word for you, because I know you've got to get back to the other side of the circuit, on perhaps Jack's emotional approach to coming back to Indy, on his whole feeling about this race.
I think he loves every race. He's highly adaptable. He gives 100% at every situation. What's happened recently, he's come on much better in the wet. I think he feels emotionally strong here, and so far the performance he's given to us engineers and in the pits has been pretty bulletproof and very sure of himself.
Listen, we appreciate you joining us.
Thank you very much.
It's a bit of a hike, and the best of luck.
Okay, Tony.
Best of luck in the race this afternoon. Okay then, so as Adrian has said, really racing here for the first time. Big problem finding the right setup for all the teams.
I'm joined by Martin Whitmarsh, Managing Director of the McLaren team. Martin, critical part of the World Championship, new circuit to everybody. How have you prepared as a team for this racetrack?
We've had plans of the circuit now for a few months, so obviously we've been looking at those, we've been putting that into our simulation, we've been playing those simulations, looking at downforce, looking at suspension setup, trying to make sure we understand it before we get here. Once you get here, of course, real world is always different from simulation. So quickly, in the first few laps, we had to try and understand that. The circuit really is divided into two. We've got the high-speed oval part of the circuit where you want low levels of downforce, and we've got the infield where ideally you'd have a lot more downforce, so you've got the grip out of the slow-speed corners.
Yes, the last two corners, plus the long straight, 926 metres. I think the cars are on full throttle over 22 seconds, and you've got a 9-degree banking. Have you had to do a specific setup for this Indianapolis track that you wouldn't perhaps use anywhere else?
We've been obviously looking at the loads on the suspension. They're they're not that high. In fact, I mean, we're pulling about 3.5 G through that last one, which is very high by anyone's standards, but by comparison to Rouge, it's not that dramatic. The actual setup is really, and the trick this weekend is going to be balancing the requirements of the high speed and the slow speed parts of the circuit. After qualifying, I think we'll see all the teams losing downforce to a much higher extent than we have, really trying to second guess where other teams are going, your closest rivals are going to be in terms of downforce, so you don't get out dragged on the straight.
Of course, that interview was yesterday. It's a very different Indianapolis today. A lot of rain about. If you're just joining us on ITV2, welcome to you all. You're watching the build-up to the first American Grand Prix for 9 years, and the off will be just over 40 minutes' time, and there's a crowd of over 200,000 here at the Speedway. Okay then, Tony, let's have a check back to the qualifying in the dry yesterday. Schumacher, as they call him around here.
Oh, Mike, they call him Mike Schumacher right now.
But he had that qualifying session in the palm of his hand, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. I think very pleased all the work that they did at Fiorano and Mugello, especially with these new harder Bridgestone tyres, this special carcass they've got. All their simulation seems to have worked. He made some small adjustments during his first qualifying run, but Hakkinen had gotten fastest initially. Then he did this 14.4, which was very, very quick. The car looked stable. He felt good. You know, he says, I've got a heart after all these dramas in Monza.
He sort of psyched them out a bit there, didn't he, Michael? Because everybody dashed out because they thought it was going to rain, and he sat back there and took 5, as they say over here, and then took the session over.
Well, he didn't want to go in the sort of traffic jam on the M25. He hung back a little bit, and even though there were spots of rain, he said, I saw them on my visor, but I just pushed that bit harder. Did that 14.4 again, very impressive.
And then Hakkinen got very, very close to his time, didn't he, to Schumacher's time?
Yeah, I think this was very impressive from Hakkinen and McLaren. They've been struggling a little bit with the setup of the car, and this is because these very, very hard tyres have had to compensate with softer springs as well. And you know when Mika's not happy with the car, he's not putting the time in, but he made a big effort here, and you see how high he was going up on the white line, and then that slingshot down through turn 13. He was quite pleased with that.
One of the unusual aspects of the qualifying session was the teamwork that we saw in it, both Ferrari and McLaren.
I think this is going to figure in the race as well. Almost practicing for the race. Very, very long straight. In the States it's called drafting. You know, we call it slipstreaming. The car in front makes a hole in the air and you can get up the speed. And Hakkinen said, I only got 2 laps left. Adrian knew, went over to Coulthard and said, would you like a tow? Well, of course, great gift, thank you. He got that extra bit of speed down the straight and got himself onto the front row of the grid, got himself to second place. Look how close he was there on the wall. Lovely, lovely driving there. And Coulthard enjoys that, but he said you feel like a racing driver going flat, flat, flat through there all the way. And they were very chuffed. There's Lisa Dennis, Ron Dennis's wife. She's happy with the team performance there. Now, but I'm not sure whether Hakkinen wanted to be on the front row of the grid. Did he want to be on the second row of the grid because of those line of bricks? Now, Schumacher's managed to get the grid moved backwards as well because of the fear of lack of traction at the start.
We'll hear more from James Allen about that in a moment. But do you think there might be a little bit of Hakkinen blowing in Coulthard's ear saying, well, I helped you in qualifying, but you've got to help me when it matters?
I think it's going to be, as they keep saying, it's a team game. Ron Dennis said, look, there are no team tactics there, but it is in our contract. If we need to radio him through and say, you've got to move, contractually we're allowed to do it. And I think Coulthard is prepared for that if it happens. But equally, Ron Dennis admits that if something happened between Hakkinen and Schumacher, then Coulthard's back in the championship race if he can win it.
Jenson Button is going to be replaced by Juan Pablo Montoya, who's watching and saying nothing to anybody from the Williams garage, and watching a very impressive performance from Button.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's spurring him on that much. It can't be comfortable having the guy that's moving you out of your job for 2 years, but he's been impressive right out of the blocks, Jenson Button, as he was in Spa when he had the 3rd place. 6 here is very good. That upset Ralph a little bit.
Well, he out-qualified Ralph Schumacher, didn't he?
Yeah, but Ralph has been saying, I'd like to keep Button. Of course he doesn't want Montoya coming into the scene and upsetting it all, but when Ralph gets it slightly wrong, it gets to him. He gets frustrated, he gets upset. The car wasn't to his liking. He'd had a few problems, and here's another spin. You know, he ends up down in 10th, and Jenson, you know, in that 6th place. But they're actually good teammates. They work very, very well together.
And I think Luciano Burti from Jaguar's new driver next season, he's going to join us here in a couple of minutes' time. But a pretty dismal old day for those Jaguars in qualifying, wasn't it?
Jaguars, Jim, the Jaguars. Yeah, it's disappointing because Irvine said we squeezed as much out of the car as we could. This was on an in-lap. slight lack of concentration, whatever. He has a little spin coming in, lack of traction seemingly everywhere, and Johnny Herbert complaining even more than Eddie Irvine. Eddie saying, look, we're working well as a team. So he's been quite diplomatic at the moment, but it's not as good as it should be, and they're under the microscope. Here, the home of Ford.
Right then, 35 minutes to go to the off. Tony, just chat us through the grid.
Well, Schumacher very happy with that pole position, of course, but Coulthard will want to make a really good start there. Will Coulthard be out there as the hare to really push Schumacher as hard as possible? Hakkinen and Barrichello. Barrichello hoping to make a better start. He said, I made a real porridge of it in Monza. Truly says, you know, slipstreaming is going to be very important here. He's chuffed with that. Button's 6th place we've talked about. Frenson-Weller, he's really taken to Indianapolis. He loves the fans and the reaction he's getting from them. Ralf Schumacher there alongside Diniz. Alex Wurz has had a pat on the back from Briatore because he said, you did all your homework, you did very well, but your teammate didn't. He's had a slap. Verstappen in the arrows a bit further back than he'd want to be. Lots of understeer for Salo. Fisichella, Briatore said you can't rely just on your talent alone. You didn't do your homework, so he's had a bit of a slapping, as I've said. Irvine back there. Della Rosa, who survived that big, awful crash in Monza. Then Herbert, who's been complaining. Alesi had engine problems with the Peugeot. Only 2 more races to go with that, Jean, don't worry. Mazzucani and Genet at the back.
We got pole position, and that's always a good indication usually for a race as we had in Monza. It's essential that we get the setup right, and we have had a good setup yesterday, so I don't expect particular problems.
Mika didn't have a chance to do another time lap, and I did, so Adrian suggested that he asked me whether it would be beneficial to get a tow, and I of course felt it would be. And I'm appreciative that he did that, but I'm also very happy with the job I did because I had another 13 corners to do after I got the tow.
You could do the similar thing in Hockenheim, but you don't get exactly the same effect. Example in Hockenheim, what you do over here, because that banking is just incredible. It takes a lot of speed away if you don't follow somebody. So it was good help for David, and like we discussed earlier about the starting grid, you know, starting pole position probably is not the best place to start.
It's going to be a very interesting race with this long straight. The slipstream will be very important, and we will see. I think it's going to be interesting.
I think I pushed a bit too hard. The team always say just push as hard as you can, and if you go off, you go off. But I think I pushed a bit too hard and got a bit wild, but there you go.
But still very well placed for tomorrow.
I think it's good. I'm very pleased to be in the top 6 again, and you never know, maybe we can get some good points tomorrow. We'll see.
We know we have a quick car. I mean, I'm just 2/10 to be in pole position, and so I'm fairly happy.
The only way really realistically I can win the race is if Mika and Michael have a problem, or certainly if Mika has a problem. Otherwise, if I'm running in front and leading, then I think it's normal to expect the team to want to try and maximise his position. So nothing's changed really.
It's always teamwork, you know, that's where it has to be.
Teamwork then, 3 to go. This Grand Prix is looming, then Japan in a fortnight and the climax in Malaysia. Hakkinen odds on to win the title again. Schumacher has that great air of confidence about him throughout the weekend. Coulthard has gone quickest in warm-up though. Barrichello's tow helped his teammate enormously, but poor Fisichella, he's had a verbal whacking from Fabio Briatore and another crash here in practice. In the constructors, McLaren have a 4-point advantage. Williams could well improve their total today. The Jordans are well placed, Trulli 5th, and Frenson is 7th. Well, beating the promotional drum here, all important in the States. Jaguar and McLaren's David Coulthard have both done their bit in New York en route to Indianapolis. Different teams, but the same message. Formula One is back in the USA.
Come from the cities and they come from the smaller towns. Beat up cars with the tires and numbers go. Boom, bang. I wanna see in the USA. I wanna see in the USA. See in the USA. Yeah. Back in the USA. It's like New York now.
can't drive like this. Come on out of the car. Come on.
Welcomes you back to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Just look at that, a fantastic crowd, over 200,000 gathered here. The rain has stopped the United States Grand Prix, the first one for 9 years at the place they hope will become the permanent American home of Formula One, is due off in just under half an hour's time, and as you can see and as you can hear, the pit lane has been opened. Delighted that we're joined by Luciano Burti. Hi, Luciano, welcome. We saw you drive briefly in Austria when Eddie Irvine was ill, and of course you will be driving with Eddie in Jaguar next season, won't you? Now, how upset are you perhaps not to be involved here, because I'm sure you'd love to be driving here?
Well, it is a little bit boring to be out of the car, but I think it's part of it. I've been learning a lot, not just about driving a Formula 1 car this year, but because I've been to all the races and most of the tests, I've been learning about Formula 1 itself, the politics, the press, how to work with the team when I'm not driving. So I think that's going to help me a lot for next year.
We saw just some pictures of you driving in Austria when they came to you very late and said you were going to have to drive, but you were so cool there, you didn't look nervous at all.
I was a last minute thing, so I knew that would be very difficult anyway. I didn't know the track. So I said, well, if I approach as a normal test, I think I'll be relaxed and I'll drive better. So I had enough pressure already, and if I was putting pressure on myself, it would be even worse. So it was better to keep calm, and it helped in the end.
I guess we've moved a bit closer to your home, a bit closer to Sao Paulo, haven't we, from Britain coming here to Indianapolis. What are your impressions of Indy as an F1 circuit?
I think it was pretty good. It's quite different from the other tracks that we've been before. You can see the whole crowd, and so you can realize how many people are watching the race. Usually in most F1 tracks you can see maybe just one grandstand and that's it. So here we can see all the fans. The paddock is very nice. The track, although there are some corners that are not that fast, it's still quite a nice track. The banking, the last corner is very nice to watch. So I think it's going to be quite interesting, and I'm glad that he came back to America.
Do you think, finally, for the moment, Luciano, that there will be a traditional, a proper start here? Is there any likelihood they might start behind the safety car like they did in Belgium?
I hope they do a normal start. I think, okay, it's wet, the first corner is a little bit slow, so there is a possibility to have an accident. But I think that's part of the game. You know, there is enough room to people to deal with each other. So hopefully they can do a normal start. It would be nice for the American fans to see that, because they are used to the running starts. So hopefully they will let them race and see what happens.
Okay, Luciano, thanks for the moment anyway. The pit lane has been open for, just about 5 minutes now. Let's sample the atmosphere down there with our reporter James Allen. James, it's all yours.
Yeah, it's my favourite time of the Grand Prix weekend. Hello everybody. The pit lane is now open. The cars have got about 10 minutes now to get onto the start grid. They could come back through the pit lane if they want to, drive back out, but once they go across that line there, they've got to go onto the grid. Very unusual. Look at this. Michael Schumacher still in his car. He hasn't done a single lap yet, hasn't driven out there at all. A lot of discussion going on. I just caught a word with Ross Brawn a moment ago, and he told me that they're expecting a shower sometime during the race. It's not completely dry. There is Ross Brawn, the master tactician. You can see he's thinking quite hard. Coulthard's back in the garage as well, I understand. Normally the McLaren drivers go straight to the grid, whereas Michael likes to come in here, just fiddle with a few things, keep the competition guessing. Now Jim, it's a total lottery today. It may rain again, but how much wing do you put on the car? You remember in Spa where Häkkinen made that memorable pass on Michael Schumacher. The reason he was able to do that was because he was on a dry setup and Michael was on a wet setup, so Häkkinen had a better straight line speed. We could see that again today. Complete lottery aspect. My hunch is that this race will be won by the team that's best at thinking on its feet. Draw your own conclusions from that.
Thanks very much indeed, James. Ferrari have been the quick thinkers this season, really. Well, if any of you out there have ever watched Formula One and envied the drivers, watch the next couple of minutes very carefully. Ever wanted to ride an F1 car? Well, now's your chance. We're teaming up with McLaren Mercedes to offer you the thrill of a lifetime, a ride in the back of their two-seater. 2 lucky winners will get a day out at Silverstone and feel the power of a 750 horsepower racing car on one of the fastest tracks of all. And don't worry too much about the chauffeur, we'll provide him too. The car's suitable for most people, but it can reach speeds of up to 200 miles an hour and corner at over 3 Gs, so you'll need to pass a medical and be within the height and weight limits. Also, you need to be 18 or over. And to qualify, you have to answer these 2 very simple questions. When did Mika Häkkinen make his Formula 1 debut? Was it A, 1991, B, 1992, or C, 1993? A, 91, B, 92, C, 93. Question 2, McLaren hold the record for the most wins in a season, but how many was it? A, 13, B, 14, C, 15. A, 13, B, 14, C, 15. Here's the number to dial, 09065 811 811. 09065 811 811. And don't worry, we'll repeat the questions at the next 2 races in the Far East, and you can find the rules and conditions on these websites. The best of luck to you all. Yes, good luck with that one. Our studio guest, Luciano Burti, will be in one of those next season. It takes us nicely to another Murray Meets, and today Murray Walker's with a man with a very big job in front of him.
It's no secret that Jaguar have had a pretty torrid debut season in Formula 1 and that some sort of dramatic action was going to be taken. Well, here is the dramatic action. New head man, Bobby Rahal. Bobby, how do you see your task? What have you got to do?
Well, I think, given the season to date, as you mentioned, initially, I'll be attending the races the rest of this year, but really trying to understand, when you consider the resources that are at work here, the might of Jaguar cars and the commitment of Jaguar and Ford Motor Company, and given the fact that the reputation and prestige and image of Jaguar cars is on the line, first thing is to understand, well, where is the disconnect? Where is the problem? Because by all rights, this should be one of the most successful teams if you just look strictly at the resources and that commitment. So over the next several months, that's obviously job 1 is to find out where the problems lie, and then job 2 is to put into effect the solutions.
Now, let me hit you with the hard one. I mean, you're a top man in American racing. You've won everything there is to win. You've had your own team with enormous success. You have driven in Formula 1 a long time ago. But inevitably, there are going to be a lot of people who are going to say, what does an American know about putting Formula 1 right?
Right. Well, I don't think that, first off, I'm not the engineer. I'm not the designer. Right. I'm not the aerodynamicist. My task is to create the organization, which means that, above all, I have to find the right people for those types of positions. And then basically I have to get out of the way. I have to allow them to do their jobs. So I think that those kinds of disciplines, I think that basic tenets of a company are no different whether you're making widgets or whether you're in kart or whether you're in Formula 1 or what have you. Discipline, organization, all those things are universal. And so I do believe that if we can instill that kind of organization and discipline and get the right people doing the right things in the right places, then it's irrelevant where I may have been.
Are you going to do this at arm's length from the States?
No. I'm moving to England. I don't think you could do this job from arm's length. When Neil Ressler called me to consider this, naturally, this is a big task. And I don't think I have any illusions as to the immensity of it. But how many times are you offered the opportunity or the chance to run a Formula 1 team?
And having enjoyed my time in Europe racing as much as I did, I enjoyed living in England many years ago. I just enjoyed the whole scene. Perhaps in some ways I'm fulfilling some of the goals just in a more vicarious way than I did as a driver. I just feel that this is an opportunity for me that if I can help turn this thing around so it's successful, that for me, my relationship with the sport, my relationship with Ford Motor Company and Jaguar, and just a sense of self-satisfaction will be tremendous.
You do realise that if you crack it for Britain and for the world with all the emotional appeal that Jaguar has got, that you will at least be Sir Bobby Rahal. Does that appeal to you?
Well, I don't. I'm not looking for that at all, but I appreciate very well what Jaguar, what that name conjures up, in its image and the reputation and what it means to England. And I may be an American, but I have an appreciation for history.
Thanks for talking to us and every success.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Just heard there is no chance of a safety car start. Indy will be treated to a traditional F1 start. Now then, Luciano, what do you make of your new boss there, Mr. Rahal?
I was pretty happy with the decision to take him on board. He was very successful as a race driver, so he has a very good racing background. Also, I know that he's a very successful businessman, so it's a perfect combination for the team. Also, with Neil Rosler, with his experience, I think the pair can do a very good job, so I'm looking forward to it.
Do you think in some way Jenson Button's performances this year have helped you get the drive, because you raced against Jenson in F3?
Definitely. I mean, I was racing with Jason, like I said, last year, so the comparison was a direct comparison. And he has done an awesome job this year, so for sure he helped. I mean, if he had done a bad job, people would be afraid to try a new driver, but they were not afraid because of Jenson. So of course he had a good car to do it. You can see how it felt. He did struggle because the car wasn't as good. So hopefully I can have a good car next year and do a good job as well.
One or two of you are a bit superstitious, aren't you, you drivers? I mean, Wirtz wears a red boot and a blue boot. And what's this about you? You never get into a car from the right side?
Yeah, well, I said that once, but I'm not that superstitious. I just said that if there is something about superstitious, I always get from the right side. But because I'm used to it, it's something that it's like maybe when you wake up in the morning and usually you get up just in one side of the bed. It's the same on the race.
So you always get in from the right side?
From the right, and leave from the left.
Okay. Now, just before you go, what about the race today? I mean, I know you're close pals with Rubens Barrichello, aren't you? But what's your overall feeling about how the race might go?
I think it's going to be quite interesting. The start, of course, is going to be crucial. You can see David's going for it. He has nothing to lose, and Michael has to be aggressive as well. Rubens is going to be trying his best to do whatever he can from fourth, and Mika, has to go for it. So it's quite nice that everybody has to go for it. They cannot send back too much. So it's going to be interesting.
Give us one name from all that group.
I think Michael.
Okay, all right. Hey, listen, Luciano. Thanks for joining us, and we'll be watching you very closely.
Thank you very much.
Next season, the best of luck. Thanks. Okay then, it is time for us to go grid walking, and that means Martin Brundle.
Hello everybody, hi all as they might say out here. Thanks Jim. Well, I've got to show you this driver's eye view for starters. Look at the incredible grandstands and crowd down there. 250,000 people they say, and this, we're getting down low so I can give you exactly the driver's eye view as they head down best part of a third of a mile into that turn one. Look at the double-decker grandstands here. Everything's big in America, not least their grandstands. Now this was due to be somewhere near the start line, the yard of bricks. I'm sure you've seen it on our programs earlier on in the weekend. But they've displaced all the way back to the second row grid the start position, some 8 metres. Now that's caused a bit of a fuss. Some people saying they've done it because Michael Schumacher didn't want to be spinning his wheels over those bricks, disadvantaging him on the start. I talked to Charlie Whiting, the race director. They actually wanted to move it back 4 places, but they need sensors underneath all these for the jump start monitors, and they weren't able to get enough of them in, so they moved the grid back. But look on the right hand side, I don't know if you can see this over here, Andy. Look, it's damp on the right hand side of the grid and dry on the left hand side of the grid. So our 2 boys, Button and Coulthard, are both unfortunately on the right hand side of the grid, so they got a wet start. but it's going to be much worse than that, I think. It's what's happening there? We're trying to get. Sorry, I'm sorry. I think he didn't know we were live. Okay, the problem they've got is, do they run wets or slicks? Apparently, it was super slippery on the infield, and even the safety car found it incredibly slippery. But there's an F-14 just coming over board. I mean, like, just stay with us on the US Air Force. Apparently, I hope you can still hear me. We can't even see him. The cloud base is so low. The problem they had this morning is on the wet tyres, they were blistering them within one lap around that banking, and because the water drains off there so quickly. But apparently the infield is so slippery that even the safety car found it difficult to drive there. In a Ferrari race that was on earlier on today, they were spinning off left, right and centre, and I really don't think the drivers are going to know what tyres to start the race on. Let's see who we can find on the grid here. I think I saw Bernie's having a chat there, so we got a little present for Bernie that we owe him from the previous race. So, but what, Sarah, could you have a quick word with ITV? What are you up to here?
Well, I'm a great supporter of Formula One. You might have seen me around a few times, and I've got some. In fact, Ron Dennis's son is my godson, so I like to support that team.
Good stuff. So you're hoping for a silver win today, then obviously. Coulthard or Hakkinen?
I don't know. I'm happy with a silver win.
Happy with this?
But it's good. It's good. It's good to be here. The Speedway's done a great job. It's a great track. It's the best track I've been to. Absolutely.
Good to see you. We've got to move on. I wanted to catch up with Bernie because he managed to beat our lot. Here he is over here now. Bernard, we got a. How are you? You must be. You must be really proud of yourself, like pulling this event together. It does look pretty spectacular,
looks great,
doesn't it?
Quite a good crowder.
Absolutely amazing, yeah?
It's
You're
like
pleased with it?
It's just like a Silverstone club race, isn't it?
It is, I know, well, yeah, but Silverstone, you know, is even better.
Stop promoting Silverstone, please.
Well, somebody's got to, you know, listen, we'll fight about that another day. I've got a little prize for you. You won.
It's not a prize, it was an investment I made.
Yeah, but you didn't pay the stake. You didn't, I'm told, you won the lira.
Take the stake
out. No, but we don't want to give you this. You didn't pay the stake.
Take the stake out.
But you can get home on this. Do you want to take it or not? Because that looks a bit dodgy. Now, what about moving this grid back? That's very kind of you. Is that a tip? Tipping's a big thing out here, isn't it?
That's the stake.
Yeah, okay. What do you think about the race? I mean,
super. It'll be a good race. Whatever happens, it'll be a super race.
You think they'll start on wets or slicks?
They ought to start on slicks, but I think but most people are going to start on wets, but I don't know why.
No, I don't know either. We've got to go back to the studio. Thanks for talking to us, Bernie. Cheers.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot, Martin. He took that money very sharply indeed, didn't he, Bernie? A few facts and figures for you. Indy 500 was a race in the F1 Championship between 50 and 60. Indianapolis, the oldest location on the F1 calendar, built back in 1909. 63 days to lay the original Brickyard. 360 bricks, and we've been talking about that start-finish line. The last USA Grand Prix was held in Phoenix in 91, and Hakkinen's finished first or second in the last 6 Grand Prix. He has scored points in the last 12. There we are then, the facts and figures for you. We are all set for the first ever United States Formula One Grand Prix at Indianapolis. It is coming right up. It's the United States Grand Prix at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. A brand new experience for the 200,000 plus crowd. It is very nearly time for those gentlemen to start their engines. Some big tactical decisions to be made. Here's Martin Brundle, and first of all, it's Murray Walker.
Welcome, Formula One race fans, to Indianapolis. And you know,